Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I am, of course, your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Linnea. Hannah is a health coach and an eating disorder recovery advocate. She helps people overcome sabotaging food habits and master body image so that they can gain confidence and find joy in their life. Hannah was such a blast to have on, and I really want to thank her again for coming on and having this discussion with me. Now, before we get into the episode, I do want to specify that I'm going to put a trigger warning on this one, just because we dive into eating disorders and, the mental state of people who are experiencing eating disorders and everything like that. So if these are things that may potentially trigger you, please just log out of the episode now. Also, if you're listening to this on the day that it's released, yesterday was Bell Let's Talk Day for all you lovely Canadians. And while I love how Bell Let's Talk Day promotes the conversation of mental health and promotes getting help for the mental health challenges that you're experiencing, I do kind of feel like it's become the Valentine's Day for mental health. So yes, while Bell Let's Talk Day is done, the conversation of mental health shouldn't be. Mental health challenges and mental health conversations are not a trendy thing. They're not a temporary thing. They happen 365 days of the year, 24 hours of the day. This is a constant conversation that we got to keep pushing with. And remember that if you are struggling out there, there is no shame in getting help. There's no shame in reaching out, and you deserve that help that you desperately want. Now, before we get into the episode today, guys, you know the drill. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to y'all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. All right. 3, 2, 1. We are good to go. Hannah, what's going on? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi. Hello, Harry. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and things are going really well, except it's cold, but it's good.
Yes, the life of a Canadian. That's
big time.
big time. So before we get too into anything, what got you inspired to become an advocate for both body dysmorphia and eating disorder recovery?
Yeah, I mean, that's there's my whole life essentially. I struggled since I was a little girl with body dysmorphia. Like, I remember some of my earliest memories were body fixations. So, like, that would, for people who don't know what that is, that would be like an obsessive checking your body for, like, to see if you're good enough, quote unquote. And, like, so for me, I would like constantly lift up my shirt, like, and look at my stomach, or, like, I would do different things to see and assess if I was okay. So I'd, like, feel for certain bones. And, I started that when I was really young, at like 7 years old. So very young. And then I starved myself the first time when I was 11. And then I didn't really understand that, it was anything other than I thought I didn't like my appearance. And then as I grew up and got older, like, I'm 28 now. So throughout my teens and early 20s, I was always very uncomfortable in my own skin. And I just thought it was because my body wasn't good enough. And then and then when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do do weight loss and all these things. And I went down the path of, like, weight loss, and, like, I became, like, a fitness person. I had people following me and, like, asking me for workouts and meal plans and all that kind of stuff. But meanwhile, I was I was really harming myself. I had gone down the path of, like, obsessive food intake, and then, like, obsessive, like, calorie counting, and then it turned into bulimia. Like, trigger warning, I don't know if you do that, but, like, yeah. And then I remember I went to the doctor and I was, like, crying, and I was, like, crying because I was scared of gaining weight, not because I was, harming myself. I was engaging in self-harm through the eating disorder. And then throughout that time as well, my dad had passed away, and, like, I was, like, traveling all the time, and I was very volatile, and everything in my life always blew up, and there was always something wrong. And I never had any true friends, like, long-term friends, because I was so volatile, and I'd cut people off, and because I didn't trust them or felt like they didn't actually like me. I'm laughing about this because, yeah, you're getting a full mouthful right now, by the way.
No, I love it. Yeah, I love it.
Good. And then the And then when I went to the doctor and I was crying about like gaining weight, she was like, you have an eating disorder. Like you have to get treatment. And I was like, oh, I was shocked. I had no idea that I was like, I knew what I was doing was hard, like stressful because I was like very overwhelmed all of the time. But I didn't know that it was like, okay, we're going to admit you're going to go and get better. And I was like, hell no.
Mhm.
And I had just graduated with my master's in Toronto. And I was like, I can't tell my family. And my family was like, what's going on with you? Like something isn't right. And they were like, maybe you should get some antidepressants. Like what's going on? And I wasn't diagnosed with anything other than that I knew I had bulimia. I kind of did. Like at the same, I was still in denial. So I was too ashamed to tell anybody. So I ran away to Mexico
Mm.
and I was like, I'm going to be a digital nomad. And like, that's kind of how I got my online platform. That's how we kind of got connected. And then I was doing a lot of how I connected to everybody was kind of like the basis a few years back in 2019, where I, um, I decided I wanted to make money online and travel the world. But in reality, I was just living in Mexico, which is much more affordable. I was away from anybody who knew me. So it really allowed my eating disorder to take over. And like my life consisted of in Mexico, like walking as much as possible, working out as much as possible, like surviving off a cappuccino every few hours until dinner. And then for dinner, I would just have like a massive salad.
Mm.
And then, and then I fell into an abusive relationship with a fellow Canadian down there. And it went from like 0 to 1,000 in like 3 weeks.
Mm.
And that was a whole that was the eye-opening experience where your life always blows up in your face and you always feel like you're in danger from other people because you can't even be safe with yourself. So of course you're going, and I just kind of had like this really scary like do or die moment with that ex. And I realized that like I don't have to live this way. Maybe I can be okay. Maybe I can be happy for more than a few months at a time. Maybe I don't always need to be fixated on getting to the next destination or losing 10 more pounds or anything like that. So that was in summer of 2020, so shortly after the pandemic started. And then since then I haven't really looked back. Like I left that relationship. I came to my hometown. Um, and I was like, all I want every day is to feel like I belong and to feel stability and to be able to call somebody up and like laugh and listen to what they have to say and like joke around and have fun rather than always being afraid that they don't like me or that they're out, that it was, for me, it was all about belonging. Like it's different for everybody, especially with eating disorders. But for me, it was just like, I hate myself. I need to shrink my body because I feel like I don't belong.
Mm.
And yeah. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And now I always talk about it and because I didn't know I was engaging in numbing behaviors my entire life until I became aware that I didn't have any direction or like conviction in my life choices. Instead, I was always running away, even though at the time I was like, no, I want to travel, which I did, but I didn't have the inner dialogue I needed to understand that I can do all these things, but there doesn't have to be volatility alongside it. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like at the time, I'm sure if it feels like the right thing. You're traveling, you're working out, you have this new platform. Everyone's like, "Oh, I love your stuff." You must definitely think you're on the right path there.
Yeah, that's a really good, yeah. It was very, I view it as feeding the distortion and like feeding the dysmorphic life I was living and how like I couldn't even see myself clearly. And to this day, I can't. And so I've had to develop a new way to think about life and to conceptualize myself. And so that's a big reason why I speak so openly about my story and like talk about eating disorders and body dysmorphia because it's confusing.
Hmm.
you know, and like I've been in and out of therapy for 10 years and like focused on treatment for 2 years, and I'm still learning so much and unpacking so much. So it's crazy. It's very complex. So I try to put things out there and like simplify it. Although sometimes I'm a little all over the place with my thoughts. Like I always have so much to say, as you can probably hear right now.
What? No, come on.
Yeah. So I don't remember what your question was.
No, I think you answered it. You're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, now I wanted to go back a little bit when you were talking about how you said you felt like you didn't belong and that no one actually wanted you around and people didn't like the way you looked, everything. Did those ideas just slowly build up over time? Like where did they originate from?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm actually really happy you asked that because a lot of the times people think that like body dysmorphia and eating disorders are out of vanity and like it's influenced by media, which to a certain extent, obviously, environmental circumstances like contribute to bringing an eating disorder and like body dysmorphia to life. And so environmental would include the social aspects and then upbringing and genetic predisposition. And so like there's a lot of things already within a human who might have it come to life. So, and I'm not the only person in my family who lives with or has lived with an eating disorder. Like a number of people have. So there's the genetic predisposition part of it. I think hence why, like at such a young age, I became very fixated on like only eating salads, making sure that I go for a walk every day after dinner. But then to another point of that, it was brought to life through like what I saw, I guess, in the media, but I was so young. Like it was more my upbringing and um I've done like trauma therapy for this sort of thing, which I'm sure a lot of people who might be listening to this do trauma therapy. So my trauma therapy, we did like visualizations and stuff. And like, I don't really have many memories pre 6 or 7 years old, which I don't know if that's normal or not. I don't really know. But like my memories when they start involve me getting up every morning and like checking my stomach. So it's definitely a coping skill, a feeling of like feeling like I have some sense of like purpose or belonging or control. Control is like yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to answer that, but it's been a lifelong thing. And of course it got exacerbated and became more consuming after like my dad had passed away. And then like I just went on to the weight loss journey and like Instagram, of course. Like I remember scrolling through Instagram and seeing like girls who were like their before photo was what my body was, and I was like, oh my god, I need to change my body. And that happened when I was around like 19 or 20, but like I mean, I was already down that path. I already wasn't comfortable with who I was, or at that time in how my body looked.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that before after thing, I've had that before too. Guys will post like, before I was fat and disgusting. I'm like, damn, bro, I look just like that. Can you relax a little bit?
Yeah.
It's kind of rude.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, those photos are impactful. Like I it was right after my dad passed away, within a few months when I saw that photo on Instagram. And that's when, it was the perfect storm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but before your dad passed, were you like getting help, or was your eating disorder kind of still there and it just kind of got enhanced afterwards?
Yeah. So the first time I was in the hospital and I was 12 years old with a nutritionist and like being told that I need to eat more and like how to have a balanced diet, but I didn't know that like that was the beginning of like lifelong help for knowing how to eat.
Right.
um but no, I didn't. I had started trauma therapy when I was, I think, 18, but it wasn't specified for an eating disorder. It was only in 2019. So, yeah, when I was 25, where I
Hmm.
was getting specific, where I brought it to my doctor's attention on my own will that I was afraid of gaining weight.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's only in the past couple years where I've had specific eating disorder treatment.
Was that hard to do, going to your doctor and admitting it?
Yeah, like as I mentioned, like I didn't know I had an eating disorder. Like I knew, like I told her that I was like, yeah, we're gonna do a trigger warning before this, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that I was like binging on, well, I was like just drinking coffee all day and then like not eating all day. And then by the end of the night, I would just eat a lot. And then I would, because I had been starving myself successfully leading up to the certain point where bulimia kicked in and was starving myself. I was on a weight loss journey, but obviously it was coming from a very disordered place for me. So I went to the doctor and I was like petrified because I couldn't control myself around food and then I would purge. So I just went to the doctor and I said that like I was telling her what I would do and I was like I'm getting my steps in. I'm like trying to meet my calories, like I'm trying to lose weight, but like I just can't control myself around food and I can't. And I was like I broke down. I was like I eat all the food and I'm crying and I like told her about the purging and it wasn't even labeled bulimia at that point. All I knew is that I needed to get into a clinic and get eating disorder treatment because I was throughout that time underweight, but I wasn't like completely skeletal, like how some people picture an eating disorder. Like I was being glorified on Instagram for like the leanness and everything for my body. So which is kind of sad. But I mean, I was being dishonest and very deceptive to myself, the people in my life, and of course to Instagram, being like, yeah, I know how to balance my calories and my stress. And meanwhile, I was stuck in bed all the time where I'd only get up I couldn't even hold a job. Like I had 2 jobs throughout this time, quit them both. I couldn't even handle a job, which, another reason why it's so important to talk about this because people's lives are completely put on hold when it comes to any mental health condition and then an eating disorder as well.
Right. I feel like with eating disorders too, there's like obviously you have to mention trigger warnings, but there's like this uncomfortable feeling when people bring it up, like, oh, we don't really want to talk about that because it's such a taboo topic. Like when you first heard that, you might have bulimia, you might have this eating disorder, like what's going through your head when you hear that because of the projection that it has in the media?
Yeah, I was horrified. Like that's a really good question. Yeah, I was horrified, like shocked. I'm like, and then after bulimia, it turned into anorexia. Like I didn't eat for a couple months, like very sporadically. And like when I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, I was like now too, it's so emotional. It's like, what? This is what anorexia is? It's not what I thought it was. And it was kind of like, and I remember calling my boyfriend, bawling. And I was like, I have anorexia. And he was like, okay, we'll get through this. And I remember alongside talking to the doctor initially about bulimia, and then like a year later getting the anorexia diagnosis. I didn't realize I had the diagnoses, and I completely forget where I was going along with that, but like it's overwhelming. Like it's definitely an overwhelming thing because it's like shocking. It's like I have to talk about this because we can, like, before it gets to the point where people start to notice that somebody has an issue with food, like can be intervention before. Like your life you don't have to feel like you don't belong. You don't have to feel like you have to shrink yourself to feel like you're okay. And I don't know. I just want to talk about it and normalize it and like just normalize the fact, like less, like last night, for example, like I've had recovery, I feel like is kind of an ongoing thing. It's kind of an addictive coping skill. It people who go for treatment for eating disorders can also go for treatment, like it's similar treatment with alcoholism. And like when I get really stressed in life, the first thing that goes is like normal food habits that I've had to teach myself. And so like whenever I miss food, it's like, hold up, there's something going on. And like just like straight away, it's like, what's going on? Why are you stressed right now? Because I now know that I have to ask myself that, because I know it's not actually, the sandwich that is the problem.
Right.
I now know it's just like, okay, you're stressed right now. And so like when I'm under a lot of stress, like at family gatherings, people are talking about like weight loss and like the right timing, when to eat food. And like I had to learn that it's okay to eat what you want when you want, and there aren't consequences. Like it doesn't diminish your value. And so to this day, like when I hear those conversations, I just have to be like, it's okay. I'm okay. People talking about that doesn't mean that I don't belong in this world. Yeah. And then body dysmorphia as well. I wasn't told I had body dysmorphia. I remember sitting with my therapist and I was like telling her about this thing. I was like, maybe my body doesn't look as different as I think it does. And I remember I like put on like clothes that I would use to wear, and like if I could wear those jeans on a specific day, it meant that I was okay. Like I was an okay person. And I remember on one day I felt really horrible about my body. And then I was like, maybe it's not my body. Maybe I can put on those jeans right now and they'll fit. So I put on the jeans and they fit.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like mind blowing. I was like, whoa. I was like, well, I can't believe they fit right now. I feel like a whale, but they fit. I'm like, something isn't right. And I remember I like went to the therapist like the next day or like a couple days later. I was like, I think I have body dysmorphia. And I was like so shocked. I like walked her through this process. She saved my life. Like my therapist is amazing. And like I think I have body dysmorphia. And she just raised her eyebrows slowly and like slowly nodded her head. She's like, mm-hmm. I was like, why didn't you tell me?
She's like, no shit.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what it's like. So I remember like telling her the same fear existed, but then saying it and like and then me being able to laugh about it. I was like, okay. So there's all this stigma around it because it's so misunderstood. And yeah, like obviously I'm like I don't think it's the right way to handle those like conversations around weight loss. Like I don't think the right thing is to be like, can you not talk about this? Because I'm at least the place where I'm at in my recovery, I'm comfortable not saying don't talk about this. Like I'm comfortable being able to say I'm okay. Them talking about this doesn't mean anything. That's not they're thinking about their body. It's okay. And that's another reason why I like to talk about eating disorders, because we don't need to, it's possible to empower the person experiencing the eating disorder to know that they're okay, and that that everybody doesn't need to be afraid about talking about food around them, or like, that's kind of a big reason why I think the way I talk about eating disorders is important, because it's really about you're okay as you are. Like, yeah, there's weight loss conversations everywhere all of the time. So maybe instead of trying to silence everything, like maybe try to silence that voice in your head that tells you that you're not good enough, you know?
Yeah. Doesn't like hesitating to talk about things also just make you feel worse if you're in that situation though? Like when people are like, we don't want to talk about that in front of, them. Like, wouldn't that just make you feel like, oh,
Like the person living with the eating disorder, you mean?
Yeah. Like when everyone around you is like, ooh, don't talk about that around them.
No, exactly. That's the point. Like I completely agree. Like I don't think that's a reasonable way, because you can't filter what's going on around you all of the time. Like I just don't think it's reasonable to ask people not to talk about certain things. So that's why I'm like, I think it's important to talk about eating disorders in the living experience of it, and knowing that when someone's talking about those other things, it doesn't mean that you're not okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I making? Yeah. So like, I think it's important to be able to hear weight loss conversations as somebody living with an eating disorder eventually. Like sometimes when you get to a low point, like when I first started recovery, I couldn't see anything about food or bodies. Like I had to really change my take on life. Like I had to my my life, if it was a house, I completely bulldozed everything, and I had to start from scratch. So
Now when you were starting from scratch, like because when you were going to therapy, what were some of the tools that really helped you get off the ground in terms of recovery?
Good question. For me, the main thing that always got me through was maybe like, because I always felt threatened by other people. It didn't matter if it was my mom, my best friend, somebody on the street, a cashier, a server. I always felt like I'm a bubbly, outgoing, like, hey, what's up? Like I've always been like this, but I was also very uncomfortable, and like I would be snappy or rude, or like, for lack of a better word, a bitch. And it was so I had to like learn to tell myself that like I don't need to know everything that people are talking about. I don't have to engage with people if I don't want to. And I was always like, maybe I'm okay as I am, maybe. And so I would like, and it took a lot of like just wearing leggings and hoodies for a while, and be like, maybe if I put on a pair of jeans, I'll be okay. And it was very like, starting recovery was like very into, like I was very close with my therapist, like texting her regularly, seeing her twice a week, and just really focusing on, I want to live a good life. So it came into very incremental things. Like I was literally like fixing my life by going about everyday life, all the mundane things, with the idea is just like, I'm okay. I don't need to try to make up for eating yesterday. Eating's okay. Maybe today and it was, like, it would always be a lot of kind of like a puppy, like when when you're like trying to get when you get a newborn puppy, you're trying to get them out of the cage, and you're trying to show them like, you can eat this food, you can drink this water, this is your bed. Like that was what it was like for me, like teaching myself that I'm okay. I do belong. It just because I'm alone right now doesn't mean that I'm unloved. It just means that other people are living their lives.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that makes total sense. Yeah, man, sometimes the most improvement you see is from the simple stuff.
Yeah.
Because we've like convinced ourselves of this belief for so long that you just need to slowly chip away at it. You're never going to tackle it right away, because I personally have dealt with body dysmorphia pretty much my whole life as well. And, you get those days where you're like, that's it. I'm overcoming this today. I'm doing it right now. Stop being a little wimp. You're good. And then the next day you're like, I feel like shit again. So just chipping away at it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like so many times I think, like with body dysmorphia and recovering from like crazy like eating patterns to like, I think the eating patterns go hand in hand with the body dysmorphia. Like it's the crazy up one day and then feeling shitty the next day. Like I did this so much with my therapist, because I was very black or white. It's like, obviously I would either eat no food for months, or I would eat all of the food in 2 hours. Like, so like exactly what you said, like chipping away at it. Like throughout the day and be like, I'm not okay right now after having breakfast or whatever. And it's like, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to work on one of my I've hired so much help throughout this time. One of my coaches is like, action beats anxiety. So it's like, have a shower, write in your journal, do a little bit of work, like do something like that. And then be like, and then afterwards you might be okay. And it was just like, like little incremental steps, especially. Yeah. It would be like, depending on how my mental health was, like on like a bad day, it'd be like, get up and drink a glass of water. Or like on a good day, it'd be like, go out, do your errands, and don't look at yourself in all of the reflective glass that you see,
Yeah.
And like, be like, maybe you don't need to check if you look okay. Maybe you can be okay just walking.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very much like that. And then over time, life just became more manageable. Like I was able to hold a conversation without feeling like I'm a burden, or like I can go for a walk and people will be doing their own thing, and I'm not threatened by them. I don't have to be threatened. I don't need to be afraid of their judgment because they're probably really fixated on themselves anyways.
Right.
And yeah, so it just, over time, it was like literally, it's to this day, like, it's much different now. Like now I'm fully functional. I have a job, like I have relationships, and like, life in general is the best it's ever been. And it's so exciting. And like, my eating disorder still lives within me. Like the dialogue is still there, but I've befriended it now. It's just kind of like, it's like I've let the puppy grow up, and I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like it's never gonna go away, but now you know how to manage it.
Yeah, exactly. My
I
body does it too.
Yeah, like I think that's one of the issues, not just with eating disorders or body dysmorphia, but with mental health and mental health challenges in general. The idea is that you're gonna eliminate it completely right away. So when you have that belief, like for me, when I had suicidal ideation, my belief was that it was gonna go away completely. And then one day I had another thought where I was like, you shouldn't be here, bro. And I remember thinking, what the hell? Like I've put all this work in, and now it's back. But the idea isn't you're going to get rid of it. The idea is now you know when it comes back, what you're going to say back to it.
Totally. And like a proactive plan too. Like when those things come up for me, like when I have like a setback, or like when the voices, not the voices, but like the dialogue and the feelings and the
Mm-hmm.
thought come back in an old coping skill kind of way. It's kind of like, okay, what am I missing right now? And it's like instantly, did you sleep enough? Drink enough water? Did you eat? And like normally it says, okay, you didn't eat. Okay, go have some food and then come back to this. And then yeah, just really basic things like, did I see my therapist enough? Did I talk to, have I been isolating and I haven't noticed? Like, isolating in the mental health kind of way, like the self-isolate. Yeah.
Right.
So totally. And I think it's not about it going away. It's about knowing, it's like, okay, am I fulfilling the basic things that I know I need to do in order to be okay?
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Now, yeah. Man, when you were talking about walking around and trying not to check every mirror, that struck a chord. I remember if I was in an elevator and they had the mirrors on each wall, I'm like, oh shit, here we go. And I would just look at each one, like every angle was different, and I was like, oh, look at you, you're disgusting. And then you're just stuck in that elevator with your own thoughts. It's terrible. It just, like, you're allowed to walk around and not check yourself out, man. It's okay.
hmm
You're allowed.
hmm Yeah. And I think I've been thinking a lot about this because I'm like, well, I'm not always checking other people out. Like, I don't
Hmm.
really, like, that's just not really what I do. And I was like, why do I think that I'm getting this? And I think it's an unfair assumption that people are always judging my body or like thinking about my body or whatever, like female or male. Like I just think that's kind of over throughout recovery. I'm like, maybe I was a little bit too concerned about my mind reading of what other, like think, a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy is this like being able to acknowledge that, okay, you're stressed right now because you're trying to read someone else's mind, but that's an impossible task. So maybe figure it out differently. Like I think that has helped a lot with body dysmorphia as well. Just knowing that other people aren't as fixated on your appearance as you are. So, and then there's also isn't the emotional response of other people's, like the emotional response that you get, like when you say like, oh, I'm disgusting, or like for me or anybody, it's just like I feel disgusting, or like anything like that. It's just like, hey, you're having this panicked response, but it doesn't mean anybody else is experiencing anything like that.
Right.
And obviously fix your pain, but it helps be like, oh, maybe I can like ease take take some of the weight off of my load.
Right.
It makes it easier. And that's kind of how I've like definitely like that step-by-step process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a liberating feeling, because I used to be the same way. I'm like, oh, people are looking at me, people are looking at my body, they think it's gross. But then you take that step back and you're like, I'm not thinking about that towards any other person around me. Like chances are no one, and like to some people this may be a thought that like scares them or makes them upset, but chances are no one really cares about what you're doing or cares about who you are in a random sea of people. If I'm walking downtown Toronto, there's very few people that are going to stop and go, "Ugh." No one cares.
Yeah.
So once you realize that, whew, man, it's liberating.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's funny. I agree with you. It is scary at first. It's like nobody cares. But then the liberating part is like, wait a second, nobody cares. That means that maybe I'm okay as I am. Like, it's just like, I think there's power within that disempowerment kind of like construct. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, yeah, no one cares, therefore it's liberating. Or like you can't really control how people react to your body, so maybe you can like try to just be okay with your own body, because your reaction is the only one that you have to live with every day. So definitely I agree with you. There's a lot of liberation within that weird construct.
Yeah, I mean, like people are gonna judge you out there, but like they're not going home with you most of the time. Chances are they're not walking back with you, and you're not stuck with those thoughts getting fed to you forever. It's the one thought within your own head that you're stuck with. So why not try to get that one to work, as opposed to worrying about what other people are saying?
Yeah, totally. That's an interesting one too, because like fear of judgment is something so many people live with. And like I've contemplated, because I talk about this a lot with like on Instagram, or like girls on Instagram, like in messaging, or like my clients and stuff. And like the fear of judgment is so complex. And I think that it really, because like I remember I used to have a lot of fears around that. But then it's just kind of like throughout recovery, it's just been like, okay, worrying about what other people think has not worked so far. Like you've been screwing yourself over. So maybe just try to like yourself. And then throughout that process, it all of a sudden it kind of like, yeah, you get that liberating feeling. It's like, well, maybe if I like myself, then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And like, and so like from an outsider, it's like, oh, that's an overwhelming statement. Nobody cares, but that's okay. It's kind of like going through it. It builds up. It naturally works out over the time when you take the baby steps for each step.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. Now, when you were going through the baby steps, was there ever a point where you saw that shift in your mentality, or did you kind of just look back and you're like, "Oh, I'm actually good now"?
No, it was never like, oh, I'm better now. It's just like, it takes a lot of effort. I'm not going to lie. It's taken a lot of, I've had my therapist. I've seen my doctor regularly. My whole family knows about how important this is. Like, it's taken a lot of effort. Like, it's not, oh, I'm better now. It was never like that. It's always just me. I can trust myself. And like, what comes my way, I can handle it. Because yesterday you ate an apple. Like, I went through a phase where I wouldn't even eat apples. I was like, eat like little things. I ate an apple yesterday. Maybe I can eat a banana today.
Mm.
And then it's like, okay, the banana was too much. I'll just go back to apples. And then like eat apples for a while. I was like, well, maybe I'll try something else. And it was like the same for everything. Like, learning how to eat food was the same as dealing with fear of judgment. And like, oh, okay, I was afraid to wear these jeans, but maybe if I wear these jeans, I'll be okay. And then it's just kind of like building up like that. And it's, you know, a lot of effort to just, and it's like really facing each fear individually. And then all the other fears are easier to deconstruct because, you know, you're taking off less and less load every time you face and like put in the effort to be like, no, I have to do this. Like, my life depends on it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, for like young girls listening who may be, you know, kind of in a situation where you were when you were younger and trying to figure this stuff out, you know, they might hear this and go, oh, it just seems like too much work. Like, what's the point of even starting? Like, what would you want to tell them if they were kind of contemplating not even trying to get help because it just seems like that's too high of a mountain to climb?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I think back to that point, it's not even about the mountain being too high. It's about fearing that getting help means that you're going to gain weight forever, and you're going to be unacceptable, and you're going to be lazy, and you can't be lazy, and you can't gain weight. So there's all those fears kind of going on initially. So the biggest thing is, just because you're prioritizing your mental health doesn't mean you have to give up exercise and eating healthy. It just means that maybe you can eat a greater variety of food without exercising 3 hours a day and still be okay. Maybe you'll be okay. And like, it's not, so the biggest thing that when I talk to so many girls, and they're like, oh yeah, I want to get help, but I need to lose weight first. It's just like, okay, yeah, all right, if you want to lose weight, that's fine, but why don't you just put it on the back burner for like 5 minutes? And when I have conversations with people about this kind of thing, and I guess whoever's listening, if I'm talking to you right now, the listener, like, it's not that the opportunity to look good is going to be lost if you give up your routines. What's actually going to happen is you're going to be able to stabilize your routines and be happy and be okay. And when you go to the gym, you can go to the gym and focus on anything other than the mirror, and like stare at yourself in the mirror constantly and like worrying about what you see, or like you can go out and not think about food, or like plan ahead about how you're going to eat food for that week. And like, there's value in meal planning when it comes to, I think, a productive lifestyle. But when it's an element of control in your life, and like you needing to eat a certain way, like, that's actually more exhausting. That's more distracting. That's numbing. It's, how often do like, it's hard. It's weird because it's easier. You think that the way you're living right now is easier, but if it was easier, then you wouldn't be listening. Like, you wouldn't be struggling right now. You would be able to be happy with your own, being in your own skin, and being able to handle conversations going on around you, and knowing that it's not a reflection of you. And so it's like, it's funny. It's like the illusion that it's easier to stay where you're at, but really it's harder in the long run. So it's just kind of like, which way do you want to go? Do you want to be miserable for the rest of your life, or do you want to like deal with this, be overwhelmed for a bit, figure it out, and then realize like, oh, maybe there's more to life. It's kind of how I like to put it. It's just like, it's just be like, recovery doesn't mean letting everything go. Like, that was key for me. Like, I remember like my first therapy session bawling because of one of the cappuccinos I had. And I was like, I had a cappuccino and it was soy and it wasn't fat-free milk and like, just like breaking down. And she's like, well, how about what if the cappuccino's okay? And then maybe you can have a cookie too, or like a granola bar and like, or an apple. It's like, so it's really about the baby steps. And it's really like, that's why it's kind of like the, like coaxing a puppy out of like a cage, or like a kitten. It's just kind of like, maybe if you step out a little bit, it's not as scary as you think it is. And even better, maybe you can actually handle what you're afraid of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's all about the baby steps. Now, the last Jesus, it's been like 2 years now pretty much, but with the lockdown, obviously, there's been a lot of weight gain or weight loss, depending how you approached it. So, a lot of people have a distorted view of their body. Friends of mine have gained crazy weight, and they're not being very kind to themselves right now because of the fact that, you look at pictures from before the pandemic and you're like, where'd I go wrong? And you're just beating yourself up. So there's a lot of that right now. There's a lot of body dysmorphia, maybe some unhealthy habits trying to get back to where they were before. How can those people start to love themselves again?
The way that I always like to approach it initially is to contextualize where you're at and see kind of like what went wrong. And wrong, it's not actually wrong. It's more just treat yourself as a human for once. Stop looking at yourself as a constant failure, and just see that, the pandemic happened. Okay. And if you've gained a lot of like pandemic weight, as they call it, it's like, well, yeah, it makes sense. You don't really leave the house much anymore. Life in general has changed a lot. Like mobility has been impacted by our inability to leave the house. So of course there's going to be that natural fluctuation there. And like working out, and like, I'm somebody who can't work out at home. Like I just want somebody who can do it. And even with the whole exercise thing, like there's so many, that could be a whole nother topic about what the type of exercise that you like, and to do it in a sustainable way, and to not have it as I hate my body, I need to burn off my food from yesterday, or anything like that. Like there's so many layers to that as well. If you're in that place right now and you're just like, that's how you approach working out and food choices, like, I'm shaking my head right now. It's like, you need to address this, because I talk to women. I have clients who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're like, I've been living with an underlying eating disorder my entire life, and now I can't handle myself. So like, let's prevent that. It's an illusion that it's easier to stay how it's going. It's like, no, it's not. Eventually it's going to catch up with you. So like, may as well try to live a healthier, happier life than having a breakdown when you're older, and you like at the time when you're supposed to be able to, well, I know it depends on your life goals, obviously, but I want to be able to have like a stable household. So like the people in my life know that they can come to my place, and that I will love them, and that they're safe, and that they're okay, and they always belong. Because I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong.
Right.
So yeah, knowing that like where you're at right now is okay. Where you're at right now isn't working. The way that you've been doing things obviously hasn't worked, because if it did work, then you wouldn't be feeling this way now. Doesn't mean everything's bad and everything's wrong. It's just like, I can modify some things. And then kind of seeing this, it's an exciting thing to get to the point to be like, well, I've never really been happy in my body, even before I had gained all this pandemic weight. So maybe I can approach this body image thing differently. Maybe, and I keep saying like this maybe thing, and that's just I don't know, like if this, it might be annoying, but like for me, it was like a lifelong hatred of my body, also myself. So it was just kind of like a lot of, those tiny little things like you can do this, try. And then just kind of seeing it as an opportunity to finally get to a place where you're not going to hate what you see in the mirror. Be like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try. And then, I don't know, follow me if you're in that situation.
Little plug.
Yeah. And then, go through Instagram and like unfollow the accounts that make you feel like you're not good enough. And because it's so funny, because so often you think, no, I can't do this. I'm sure that a lot of people don't like to listen to this. They're like, no, I don't, that will be undisciplined. I'll let myself go. I'm not going to be okay. And it's like, well, no, if you put more rules in, then you're going to end up back where you are right now. Like, it's not about having more rules. Cause like I did that. I was like, by the end of like the anorexia, I was eating avocados, and which, they're kind of high in calories, but I would eat like, got the best bang for my buck. Like I could eat as little as possible, but still get the best calories so I wouldn't die. Like it was just kind of like, just, get that fuel so I wouldn't bloat or anything. And I promise you, the more rules you put in, the more miserable you'll be, because the more rules you're putting on life. Because like food and exercise are a part of life. It moves you in the direction of where you want to go long term. It shouldn't take over your life. And yeah, I tried to have it take over my life, and then obviously it succeeded in a very dysfunctional way and destructive way. So I would contemplate the idea of like, maybe you can reconceptualize how you value yourself. And especially most people have never been happy in their bodies. So it's just kind of like, okay, well, is weight loss this time really going to work? Probably not.
Right.
And like people, like even Megan Fox has body dysmorphia. And it's just like, okay, well, if Megan Fox has body dysmorphia, it's just like, well, maybe getting a perfect body isn't the right solution then.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's my approach to it anyways. In case you can't tell, I have quite I have a lot to say, and I in my thoughts a lot. Classic. I'm in my head a lot, so I think about a lot of these things. So hopefully it makes sense.
No, it does, absolutely. And like it's okay to be long-winded in this scenario, just because like there's so many different angles you can approach it. Like one thing that I love that you said is at the very beginning you were saying how, some people sit there and go, what have I done wrong? And it's about changing that and saying, what have I been doing, as opposed to what have I been doing wrong? That small little tweak, because when you're sitting there going, what have I done wrong? It sounds like this scenario that you're in, you're never going to get out of. You're like, oh, you're fat now? Good luck for the rest of your life. Rest in peace. Say goodbye to the old you, because you're never going back to that. And just having that small little change in the words is so impactful. It's like, what have I done? Okay, I've done this. How do I get out of it? As opposed to, what have I done wrong and why am I going to be here forever? That's a huge difference.
It is. It so is. And that's really fuels like that whole black and white thinking that so many people do. It's like, yeah, the doing, what am I doing? What's going on right now is so much more powerful than you're such a failure. Look at yourself. What did you do wrong? You fucked up again. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
We're so harsh to ourselves, and just, the little tweak is kind of like, okay, what can I do differently? And like, I don't know, if what can you do differently? It's like, for me, it was, I mean, for the start, it was you wake up and brush your teeth and wash your face. Like I was at a place where even doing that was like, I have to get out of bed. What? So if you're at a place where it's like, just get out of bed and go brush your teeth, or if you're working and stuff, it's like, well, maybe you can get up 15 minutes earlier and listen to a meditation in bed. Like people also think that they like, in order to get healthier, they need to follow these strict things, but that's again, like all or nothing. It's like, no, like I've been on my like very focused mental health journey now for a few years. And even now I don't like getting up and meditating, but I do find value in like letting myself wake up peacefully. So I just like put on a meditation and like lay in bed. And as I wake up, kind of like come in and out of it, and then kind of like ease myself into the day, and kind of like this is another empowering thing, like another liberating thing to build off of. Like, what can I do differently? It's like, well, how about you do something that actually is enjoyable? Like, you know, you don't need to change everything, but like change a little bit and like at least have the ideas like, well, maybe this will make me feel better. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It's always just reasoning with yourself and getting to a place to be like, well, maybe I'm not as bad as I think I am. And like, I don't know. I was also very hard on myself for a long time. So maybe this is a little more extreme than what some of your listeners might resonate with. I'm not so sure, but
Yeah, no, I feel like I feel that too, because I've always been so hard on myself. So even just the basic like, okay, what can I do differently was a game changer when I was recovering, because before it was like, you're such a piece of shit, bro. Like you're so blah, you're ugly, you're lazy, and then you switch it to, okay, well, what am I gonna do about it? And that's that switch, as opposed to just sitting there and being like, well, that's just who I am. I'm defined by, I'm a piece of shit. Like that's just who I am by definition. As instead of looking at it like that and looking at it like, okay, if that's how I feel right now, how am I going to shift my mindset? That little tweak just helped me so much.
yeah, definitely. And like another thing, when you said that, it reminded me of like at that place where it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? I remember when I was at a low spot, it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, it's like,
Right.
I can't do anything right. And like, I'm laughing, not laughing at the people living with that experience or at myself either. It's just kind of like, well, like ask for help. Like you don't even need to know what you're asking for. Like for me, I didn't know I was asking for help when I went to the doctor. I went to her and I was like, I'm so scared of gaining weight. And
Mm-hmm.
like, and then somebody else is able to, you know, the outsider perspective that you're unable to see because you're so entangled in your, you know, the life that you're living, the trauma and the anxieties that you're living with that have been, you know, building up over time. Like having an extra set of eyes is so important. And like I kind of left that out. Ask for help, even if you don't know what you're asking for. If you're in pain, like with yourself or struggling to get out of bed, living with suicide ideation, anything like that, just like say it to somebody. But I also understand that it takes time. And normally, unfortunately, like for me, anyways, I don't know about you, but I had to get to a really bad spot, like a do or die situation in an abusive relationship to be like, okay, time to ask for help. Like, and be actually ready to receive it. Like I had been getting help, but I wasn't at the place to be like, okay, you have to be a bit more active in this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I've not with the abusive relationship thing, but it was definitely like a do or die situation. And unfortunately, that's just the way things go. Is you're more receptive when your life is on the line. You're like, oh, okay, I get it now. When in reality, like, if there was just a way to tell everyone, like, hey man, you're worthy of love, by the way. Like you aren't the piece of garbage that you think you are, and you're allowed to get help right now. If you could tell the whole world that and they all received it before things got messy, man, what a
The world,
beautiful world.
I was literally just about to say the exact same thing. I was like, the world would be so different because it would be filled of people who are functional on their own. Like I only view myself as a functional person. Like there's functional people that exist. Like, you know, with you, me, everybody else, like everybody has like some sort of mental health thing or like trauma, and like you never know anybody's stories. And we like carry on. So like we are able to function, but being able to get to a place of like functioning and like being happy and like being able to like share ideas. And I'm not talking about a utopian society or anything. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I believe that there's value in conflict, like, you know, arguments between people or whatever. Like, I think that there's a responsible way to go about it, obviously. Not like a free for all or anything. Like, but I think that there's figuring things out with other people's perspective, I think, is like a learning experience. So that's what I mean by there's value in it.
Mm-hmm.
But being able, like a world of people who knows like maybe like you're not the piece of shit that you think you are. Yeah, it would just be a lot less painful, you know, because like each person carries a lot of pain with them, and it just be, yeah, I don't know, and a lot more honesty and vulnerability, but that's really hard. So
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
I think more discussions will help propel it as close as it can get. You know, like what you're doing, being so open about this stuff. I think, you know, it's going to spark conversations. I think it's super important because these are conversations that, like, you do more of your work with girls, but when guys hear this stuff, they're like, oh, I actually am going through that too. There's a whole different, like, girls and guys, there's a ton of people that just don't want to talk about it because it's so uncomfortable. And so, I mean, for me anyway, I appreciate your honesty and vulnerability. I think it's going to help a ton of people. So thank you for everything you do, Hannah. Seriously.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you're so right. This isn't, yeah. It definitely isn't a female only problem. And thank you as well for like owning like your dysmorphic experiences. And like one of my family members who's also lived with an eating disorder and like body dysmorphia is a male. And like I've tried to delve into that realm and like talk about that. Actually, you should come onto my channel on Instagram. That would actually be really valuable to talk about a male perspective of living with body dysmorphia, if you're ever comfortable with that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I mean,
because yeah, I receive messages from guys and they're just like, you know, I know this is for girls, but you help me too. It's like, oh, that's good. I'm glad.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'd be more than willing. I mean, I just said it on a podcast, so I
Yeah,
guess
totally.
the foot's out the door.
More the
Yeah, exactly. Now, for anyone who's listening who may want to, you know, learn more about you or, you know, reach out to you or, you know, follow your stuff, like where can they find everything?
Yeah, so my Instagram is my main platform. It's my name, Hannah Linnea, with I'm at the beginning. So that letter I, the letter M, and then Hannah Linnea. I'm sure it'll be in the description. So Instagram is my main thing. The exact same is on my TikTok, and I have a YouTube channel as well, Hannah Linnea. And yeah, Linnea, Hannah with an H at the end, and then Linnea, Linnea. Most people don't know how to spell that, but yeah, Instagram for sure. And like I am very active on Instagram. I'm always in my messages and chatting with followers and that kind of stuff. So, because this stuff is important. Like I know how debilitating it is. So that's why I love having conversations. So thank you so much for providing an opportunity for us to discuss this and for me to blabber.
Of course. Yeah. And I'll put all those links down below. Hannah, again, thank you for all the work you do, and thank you for coming on. It was a blast.
Thank you. It was so much fun. You're so sweet, Harry, and like great work with everything that you do. And to the listeners, I hope that you know that you're okay as you are, and you got to start believing it.
Yeah, you better. I'm going to end it with that. To all my viewers, see you guys next time.